Picture two giants standing at the edge of a cliff. Same data in their hands, same charts showing air traffic about to explode and airports choking on their own success. They look at identical numbers and reach opposite conclusions. Airbus says the future is massive planes. Boeing says smaller ones. Both throw tens of billions of dollars on the table. One of them was dead wrong, and it wasn't even close. To understand how we got here, go back to 1995. Boeing rolls out the 777. 2 engines, wide body, capable of flying almost anywhere. It obliterated the best long-haul aircraft Airbus had, the A340. 4 engines versus 2. Similar passengers, similar range, but the 777 sipped fuel while the A340 guzzled it. Airbus sold 377 A340s. Boeing has sold over 2,200 777s. A 6-to-1 massacre. But 20 years earlier, Boeing couldn't have built this plane. Not because of technology, because of the law. The 60-minute rule kept twin-engine planes within 1 hour of the nearest airport. One engine dies over the ocean, you better be close to land. That's why the 747 existed. That's why the A340 had 4 engines. Not engineering preference, legal necessity. Then engines got much better. In 1985, the FAA let TWA fly a twin-engine 767 from Boston to Paris. By 1991, more passengers crossed the Atlantic on twin-engine 767s than on every 3- and 4-engine aircraft combined. The rules kept loosening: 120 minutes, 180, 330. By the mid-2000s, a twin-engine plane could fly anywhere a 4-engine plane could. The entire reason 4 engines existed had vanished. And there's an irony worth pausing on. Airbus built the A340 alongside the A330. Same skeleton, same fuselage. The A330 got 2 engines. The A340 got 4. Today, the A330 still flies. The A340 has been out of production since 2011. Same airplane, different engines, completely different fate. So Airbus watched the A340 get demolished and decided to build an even bigger 4-engine plane. Before Airbus poured $25 billion into the A380, Boeing tried the same thing. In 1996, they unveiled the 747X, a stretched double-decker for over 650 passengers. Airlines were interested, but nobody would commit. Boeing killed it in 2001. Then Airbus watched all that and went ahead anyway. December 2000, they launched the A380. Budget $9.5 billion, and they sold it brilliantly. Boeing had pitched the 747X as a derivative. Airbus positioned the A380 as something the world had never seen. Double deck, bars, showers. They used the same playbook Boeing ran with Pan Am on the original 747. Sell to prestige carriers first, the rest follow out of fear. Emirates signed on. Singapore Airlines, Qantas. The economics were real. 15 to 20% lower cost per seat than the 747. 1 plane replacing 2. 1 airport slot instead of 2. Meanwhile, Boeing was stumbling into the right answer. The same day they killed the 747X, they unveiled the Sonic Cruiser, cruising just below the speed of sound. Airbus bet on size. Boeing bet on speed. Then September 11th happened. Airlines bled $13 billion that year. 1,000 planes sat in deserts. Nobody cared about speed or size anymore. Airlines wanted efficiency. By December 2002, the Sonic Cruiser was dead. But they didn't start from scratch. All its technology, carbon fiber composites, new engine architecture, advanced avionics, they poured into a completely different airplane. Not fast, efficient. Not big, right-sized. The 787 Dreamliner. 200 to 300 passengers, 20% less fuel than anything in its class, designed to fly point to point. Portland to Reykjavik, Austin to Amsterdam. Routes that could never fill a 500-seat airplane. In 2004, ANA became the launch customer. The plane that would kill the A380 was being built. Meanwhile, Airbus was drowning. Each A380 contains 530 kilometers of wiring, wings from the UK, fuselage from Germany and France, tail from Spain, everything to Toulouse for assembly. When the German wiring harnesses arrived, they didn't fit the French sections. Different teams, different software versions, thousands of cables that simply didn't match. 2 years of delays. The budget climbed from $9.5 billion toward $20 billion. The parent company's stock dropped 26% in a day. When the A380 finally flew, it worked well. Passengers loved the double-deck cabin. Singapore reported 20% less fuel per seat than the 747. But the business case crumbled. Lufthansa put their A380 on Frankfurt to New York. Cost per seat dropped as promised, but revenue dropped almost as much. Dump 500 seats on one route, and you slash prices to fill them. Then came the blow nobody expected. Before a single A380 had been delivered, GE and Rolls-Royce announced new engines with 15% better fuel efficiency. Those engines were going on the 787. The A380 wasn't flying yet, and its power plants were already a generation behind. Then, oil surged from $50 a barrel to $147. 4 engines at those prices was brutal. Orders collapsed, FedEx pulled out, UPS canceled, Virgin walked away from 6 planes. And there was no secondhand market. When Singapore retired their first A380s after just 10 years, nobody wanted them. They were scrapped. Only 20 airports worldwide can handle an A380. So why did Emirates keep ordering? Because Emirates isn't normal. One hub, Dubai, halfway between Europe and East Asia, hours from Africa, connected to India. Their model is funneling everyone through one airport. A 500-seat plane makes perfect sense. Tim Clark bought 123, nearly half of every A380 ever built. At that volume, everything works. But one airline holding half of all orders made the program fragile. When Emirates stopped, nobody filled the gap. And the plane needed airports rebuilt for it. Wider runways, double jet bridges, reinforced taxiways. New York spent $175 million on modifications alone. Airlines waited for airports. Airports waited for airlines. The 787 had none of this. It fits any gate a 767 uses. No modifications. The A380 needed everyone to coordinate simultaneously. The 787 just needed a parking spot. When Boeing announced the 787, Airbus shrugged, called it a reaction to the A330. Airlines kept pushing for a competitor. Airbus offered the A330-200 Lite. Same fuselage, new wings. A Band-Aid. Singapore Airlines said, just design a new airplane. Qantas rejected it and ordered 787s. That forced Airbus back to zero. In 2006, they announced the A350XWB, a complete redesign. Budget ballooned from $5 billion to $15 billion. The irony was absurd. Airbus telling the world the A380 was the future while building a plane that contradicted everything it stood for. The numbers say it all. A350, over 1,500 orders. A380, 251. The plane Airbus didn't want to build outsold their flagship 6-1. But here's what gets left out. Boeing was right about the future. Smaller, efficient twins. The world proved them right, 10-1. And they almost destroyed themselves building it. The 787 came 3 years late. Batteries caught fire. The fleet was grounded. Boeing has spent $32 billion and still hasn't broken even. Airbus was wrong about the future, but survived, because the A350, the plane they were embarrassed into building, became one of the most successful widebodies ever made. Boeing read the future right and nearly went bankrupt. Airbus read it wrong and survived because someone else forced them to build the right plane. The A380 didn't die because it was a bad airplane. Passengers loved it. Pilots loved it. Emirates will fly theirs until the mid-2030s. It died because the world changed, and one company saw it coming, and the other didn't.